right, we're live. So, this is going to be interesting discussion. I just thought I would just go live. Because there's obviously like no shortage of things to talk about. But thought this would be an interesting like bridge over to the other side because I mean, today, like I usually don't get scared by like headlines or anything like that, but it's just kind of humbling to know there's like enemy activity within the borders. It's kind of scary. I don't know if anybody watches Alex Jones, but he's been talking, and obviously not everything he says is correct or accurate or is going to happen, but he's throwing out like ideas that this is like part of an EMP future attack, and yeah, that would not be good. I don't know how we would get Uber Eats if we didn't have electricity. It would be bad. No, but in all seriousness, it's really disturbing. Let me just set this up. How do I get, Chinese spy balloons on you 24/7 TikTok? Hi, John. Yeah, the spy balloons. I know, but people are on TikTok 24/7. I know. It's so funny. The spy balloon is picking up like one millionth of the amount of data that TikTok like sends regularly. So disturbing. But yeah, today I wanted to talk about not just the spy balloon thing, but just in general the whole idea of what it's like to live in this like incredibly demoralized nation of people. It's like, what's going on? I need to get my energy up. Let's see. All the topics that we can go over. Let me see. Add to broadcast. Okay. All right. So if you're not familiar with the concept of like subversion and demoralization, it's a really interesting topic, and it explains a lot about what's going on in society right now. Like actually a lot of what's happening. And I don't know, if you follow my channel, I feel like you would know about like Yuri Bezmenov and like those sorts of topics. But essentially, it's demoralization is a process where, let's look it up. Where as a society, you're demoralized. Like you are not capable, and you are the definition actually does talk about it's so basically it's an act of corrupting or subverting morals, especially the act of corrupting or subverting discipline, courage, and hope. So you're ready to give up right away. And how many of us know people who are like that and know that if you walk outside, that's the kind of society you would be greeted with? And I know it's disturbing, but honestly, it's accurate. Like through all this propaganda, through all of this conditioning, through the education system, all these different things that have been happening over the last few decades, we are now left with a generation and a couple generations of people who are completely demoralized. They spend their time focused on irrelevant, useless, nonsensical topics. I think you can name a few. And the media, the institutions, they spend their time on these same ridiculous topics. Now, Yuri Bezmenov was basically a KGB agent who defected to he worked in the USSR, and then he was assigned to help implement socialism in India. And then he defected over with a group of hippies over to Canada, and then he eventually made his way to the US. And he's really famous for just all of his clips outlining the process of demoralization, because it's a process. It's something that you can recreate essentially, because obviously human behavior is kind of, you can anticipate what it is. It's kind of predictable when you modify certain things, when you promote and glamorize certain behaviors and make certain conditions within the environment, people are going to respond to certain ways, and it's really predictable. Um, and it's just so terrifying to think that we could go to war with a country right now. Like, literally, it's incredibly terrifying. Like, how can you imagine the group of people? Like, what kind? I mean, this is a group of people. This is a generation where they actually try to address things like microaggressions and misgendering. Like, they're not going to stand up to the psychological and physical realities of war and wartime. Like, no, they're not. They're just not. They're not capable. They're not fit for it at all. At all. And it's so sad to think that, unfortunately, because people don't have the tool sets and they don't understand the whole process, they haven't individually and as a collective, we haven't been able to like counteract all these negative influences, which, I mean, it's pretty obvious that we have a nation filled with foreign agents. Like, hello. Um, a lot of things make more sense if you view them from the perspective that this is intentional. They're intentionally trying to, let's say, make our cities less safe, make people unhealthy, make people psychologically unhealthy, and destroy small businesses and the middle class. Like, everything makes sense. The conspiracy theories don't really seem like conspiracy theories if you actually just approach it from that perspective. Like, this is all intentional. Because I think in a lot of ways it is. I mean, I know, like, you don't accidentally just put high amounts of, like, I guess, aluminum in people's foods, or spray irradiate people's foods with harmful chemicals, or go out of your way to process things like, let's say, go out of your way to process things like rapeseed oil. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yes, like the food pyramid. I mean, the food pyramid alone is intentionally created to make people fat. Like, that's the only outcome. I just don't understand why people, I guess it's really uncomfortable to come to the conclusion that this is intentional, that these people are literally trying to depopulate, they're trying to destabilize. I mean, to me, it makes things a little bit easier to process just knowing that it is intentional. Because if it's just an accident, then that's even more frustrating, honestly. That's even more disturbing. Um, Yeah, so Yuri Bezmenov, the 4 stages of ideological subversion. I want to play that video. Let me pull it up. I don't know if it's copyrighted because you can't. Hey, what's up? Hello from South Africa. Yeah, I don't know if it's copyrighted. So let me see what happens, because I'm still getting used to this whole process of the streaming software, and YouTube will take your video down if you are streaming things that are, they don't allow, like, they are very on the copyright. They are very quick on that. Okay, let me see. Let me pull it up. But overall, like, what do you think about that? Do you think that it's easier to deal with or more difficult to deal with when you approach things from that perspective? Because for me, I just like to live in reality. I don't like to live in some fantasy land about what things could be or what they might be. What is this? Literally. Okay. Okay, let's go. I mean, it's just so much easier to deal with change management and deal with change if you're looking at things objectively, like what's actually happening. Um, that's just how it is. But for a lot of people, they much prefer to live in a fantasy and just hope things go fine. I don't know. I just can't. If it's easier to live in denial, like in the fantasy of thinking, okay, these people are acting in our best interest when the evidence shows that they're literally not. Like, none of these things are accidental. Like, a lot of time and money and research goes into them. I mean, hell, the Georgia Guidestones, literally, they say they want to depopulate. Like, I don't understand how much. There obviously is organizations that are looking at solving some of these problems related to population and the climate and whatever they want to call it. Yeah, the big picture is so much easier. So much easier. Let's see if YouTube will let me play this video. But let's see. Let's see. Let's see if it will work, because YouTube doesn't like you to play things that you don't own. Um okay. Okay, there we go. Um let's see. Let's see if it will let me. I don't know if audio comes through. I don't think. Can you all hear the audio? Okay. It's not hearing my audio cut out. Can you hear me talk? I need to get. Yeah, it is Yuri. I need to get an idea of how to get the audio to like connect with the screen shares. Because every single little thing in this app, honestly, is just a pain to go through. Let me see. Can you hear me? Is my audio coming through? Maybe I muted myself. Okay, cool. Okay. Over start. I mean, it's shocking to hear. It does- That's crazy. I don't understand why it's not picking up the audio. Okay, I'm gonna pause it. Okay, let me go through. So, man, streaming software is difficult. Ecamm Live. But basically, I'll just read out the like process of it. I'll just read out the process. That's easier. That's probably why it hasn't given me a copyright strike. Whew. Because there's, I mean, it's a very well structured process. Okay. So the first phase of the process is the demoralization process, which lasts about 15 to 20 years, obviously. And then the second process, yeah, I'll just keep going with the stream and then I'll just work it out for the next one. Make sure the audio and everything connects because I thought it was connecting. Um, so in that demoralization process, 15 to 20 years, that is the amount of time required to educate a generation. And you know, it's funny to me when we had the recession with Obama, how everyone had to like basically they went back to school. Did you guys recognize that? I mean, looking back at it, it seems pretty suspicious because honestly, you need to re educate people. So they put them back in school. So you have a whole group of people who just stayed in the education system. And obviously, we know the education system is like cancer for anyone who like doesn't want to come out like either like a radical feminist or like a full-blown Marxist. So it's funny how a lot of these things sort of tie in together, perhaps, maybe. I don't know. They just sort of tie in together and just wrap into each other and work seamlessly because that was a great time for them to just move the agenda forward significantly because they had people being re educated in this whole bunch of mess. Um, And a lot of these people that are helping along the way for the first demoralization process are, you know, teachers and media personalities, things, people that are working for this agenda without working toward the demoralization without really being conscious of what they're doing. Obviously, to them, because of the propaganda and everything, the way it's structured, it's not apparently obvious. Like they don't realize them advocating for the Rainbow Coalition flag people in such a heavy extent is going to lead into, oh, let's introduce the T and let's introduce the the minor attracted people. Like, let's just keep pushing the envelope. Um, so they play into each other. And I love that a lot of people think that it's not really connected. Like, none of these things are connected. They just sort of happen organically on their own. When in fact, if you were going to change society, you really have to make sure to plan it out in these, stages. So the one thing that Bezmenov does say is that he claims that the USSR was surprised at how easy the demoralization phase was. So obviously the demoralization phase honestly happened a long time ago. It didn't happen just now, like recently in the 2000s. It happened a while ago and it just kept, escalating. So the next phase is the destabilization phase. Now, that one, I feel like we've definitely crossed that. I mean, there's a lot of different events that have happened, individual events and collective, series of events that could really point to like the destabilization of the country and society in America. And I mean globally, honestly, too. But so following the first phase, this destabilization phase is a 2 to 5 year period that changes the target country's foreign relations, defense, and economy. So it's going to just actually start. This is when the demoralization has hit. Again, demoralization is making them less, they're not inclined to actually advocate for their best interests, to fight for their best interests, and so on and so forth. And then that's when those negative policies actually start to take effect in the destabilization. And this is supposed to be 2 to 5 years. But honestly, who knows like how many cycles of this we've been through? Like, I don't even know. It would be hard to say. John, did Russia, USSR stop the plan after the collapse of the USSR? I don't think they did. I don't think they did. I don't think they stopped their plan. I think that it's a global effort. I don't think it's one country targeting US because obviously, I mean, their goal is to have a one world government, obviously. So the next phase, number 3, is crisis. Now, the crisis phase, this is supposed to be 6 weeks of chaos as a climate turning point. I mean, we went through 2 weeks to stop the spread. So, I mean, it just seemed like, again, obviously, these things were happening concurrently almost, but it really just put the pressure down. Like, how many people went off the edge after 2020? How many people after the lockdowns? How many people just really just went full speed into the woke agenda? And how many people, honestly, how much has changed in terms of a lot of these other agendas and how much these have accelerated since 2020? Because again, like, people were off, they were off kilter. They're not stable. So it's easy to come in amongst the chaos and sort of put your own order to that. Okay. And the last phase is normalization. And I feel like this is obviously the phase that we're in at this point. We're looking to rapidly normalize all of these aberrant behaviors and all of these antisocial, like, disturbing habits and behaviors. So in the 4th normalization phase, this stage changes the appreciation of what the status quo looks like. And then Bezmenov also states that this includes a military takeover. And I mean, we literally have foreign agents like everywhere, honestly. So I think it's accurate. I feel like it's accurate. I feel like it makes sense. I feel like we're definitely going through it. Obviously, when it's actually done, he wrote this and he said all of this back 40 years ago when they didn't have this rate of technology, when they didn't have all of these things. So, you know, there's changes, there's going to be modifications and updates. That pesky 2A, yeah, exactly. The 2A is like, you know, it's just so annoying. It's just so annoying for a lot of this. I mean, honestly, once it gets to the end of the line, in a lot of ways, people will just be giving up their guns. I mean, if they could really demoralize it, look at Australia. They willingly gave up their guns. And I mean, we see how well that worked out for them. If you're not familiar, like Australia had literally like the second longest, like, no, I think they actually had the longest lockdown period, like phase, continuous phase, because I know in China they're still locking people down, but they sort of do it sporadically where they'll let things go back to normal and then come back. So, yeah. It's just, and then again, it has so much more meaning than just, oh, they gave up their guns or, oh, they decided to do this. It just is a really clear marker, like people wearing masks, where they are mentally. Like it's a really good way to track, okay, can we go to the next phase? Can we move forward with this? Are people psychologically ready for it? Will they accept it? So a lot of these acts and physical markers help give cues to the larger global network, the larger group of people who are sort of organizing this. It's so disturbing. It's so sad. It's so sad. And it's sad. What the saddest part is, this guy he talked about all of this like years and years ago, 40 years ago. Did anybody factor it in? Did anyone, think about it? I mean, obviously, we're not in the intelligence agencies. We're not working in any like military capacity. So it's not something that we would think about. But as a whole, I feel like we should be aware and vigilant about these sort of things because they are very real. And what's funny too is how they took the idea of a communist takeover. I feel like, at least for me personally, the perspective growing up was like a Marxist, like communist takeover. That's something that couldn't really happen, or it's kind of silly and irrelevant. Like it's a joke, honestly. Like if you think about it, the way they speak about that period of time when people were trying to, weed out all of the Marxists, um, and the communists, they just make it seem like a joke. I mean, so many people were involved in it. So many people. So, what I wanted to talk about also was related to demoralization. And then John, is it more insulting that they're trying to think we're dumb enough to fall for it? They can tell that we're not, as a collective, if we're not able to counteract it. They can tell. They do a lot of data collection. They need the data to be able to tell, okay, what messages can I put out? What can I say? How can I get people to fall for this? How can I get them to go along with it? And honestly, the majority of people are dumb enough to fall for it. It's really, really sad. Like, most people are not vigilant. Most people do not care about their communities, their homes, their families, what their children watch, what they subject themselves to. And they're just open books. They're just ready to take in whatever sort of propaganda is pushed their way. But for all these agendas, like the actual subversion, it's like the subversion process needs a lot of different streams feeding into it. Like a lot of different ways to actually get that flood, get that that rush. And I found this book that is really, really interesting. Um, so this book is called I'm going to put it on the screen actually for everybody. It's called The Corrosive Impact of Transgender Ideology. And this is a really, really interesting book. It outlines and outlines specifically how they're utilizing this agenda to sort of transmit their agenda. They're using this one agenda to push the larger agenda, obviously. Excuse me. Okay, let me pull it up. So that's the book, and it's free online, and I definitely recommend picking up this book. So one second. I need to edit that out. Okay. So if you just search for it, you'll be able to find it. So I'm going to do an actual video on this book and how important a lot of the points they're making are. But I just wanted to read it during the live because I haven't had a chance to like really read it and go through it yet. So I thought it would be fun to do that with everybody on the live. Okay. So summary, let's see. So, in less than 2 decades, transgender has gone from a term representing individuals and little used outside of specialist communities to signify a powerful political ideology driving significant social change. At the level of the individual, yeah. I'll post the link when I finish. I'll post the link in the description. But yeah, at the level of the individual, the shift has occurred through the separation of gender from sex, before bringing biology back in via a brain-based sense of gender ideology. So, I mean, if you haven't noticed, a lot of these leftist ideologies focus on like postmodernism, focus on just destroying the connections between nature and reality, because obviously nature is ruled by God and God is evil. So they have to get rid of that. Yeah, thanks for posting that in there. But essentially, this return to biology allows for the formation of a distinct identity group, one that can stake a claim to being persecuted and depends upon continual validation and confirmation from an external audience. All critical discussion is a threat to this public validation and is often effectively curtailed. So, I mean, that's pretty accurate way to summarize, because they are the pinnacle of victimhood that you can reach. I mean, did anybody see the Family Guy skit where where the bartender's like saying something and the person's like, "Oh no, it's okay. I'm transgender." And he's like, "Oh, we'll do whatever you want." Any all the time. Okay. So, this is only half of the story, unfortunately. Let's see. I hope people can see the book. There we go. This is only half of the story. The total number of transgender individuals remains tiny. That transgenderism has moved from niche to mainstream tells us more about the rest of society than it does about transgender individuals. People in positions of power within the realms of media, education, academia, police, Social work, medicine, law, and local and national government have been prepared to coalesce behind the demands of a tiny transgender community. Previously, authoritative institutions now lack confidence in their own ability to lead and look to the transgender community as a victimized group that can act as a source of moral authority. However, this in turn erodes sex based rights and undermines child protection. All super accurate, all incredibly accurate. Yeah, it is a feedback loop. Curing the blind. Somebody asked what I think of Mr. Beast curing the blind. I think that's pretty awesome. Okay, now next. So, the expansion of transgender rights has gone hand in hand with an expansion of state and institutional, both public and private, regulation of speech and behavior. I mean, this is something, come on. We might think of it related to, the C-19 and the lockdowns and things like that, but honestly, it tracks really, really well. They run very close together in terms of regulating speech. I think that the C-19 though, it was a great is a great flashpoint, like a great event to really push it, but then they're continuing on with this gender ideology. This highlights the expansion of transgender rights going hand in hand with an expansion of state and institutional regulations of speech and behavior highlights a significant difference between today's transgender activities and the gay rights movement of previous eras within the gay rights movement was about demanding more freedom from the state for people to determine their sex lives unconstrained by the law. The transgender movement demands the opposite. It calls for recognition, and protection from the state in the form of intervention to regulate the behavior of those outside of the identity group. I mean, still super accurate. And I like how direct this is in terms of calling out exactly what's happening, because you have to really connect the dots for a lot of people. I found Yuri Bezmenov does mention how once people are demoralized, no matter how much information you give them or actual data, facts, how much you try to explain to them or try to reverse this, it's really hard for them to recognize reality. Like they cannot and they will not want to go back and see it. So having this sort of direct and clear-cut explanation of to what the differences are and to illustrate the differences between this era and the previous eras, I think could sort of maybe start to clarify for people or give them something to latch onto to help them question, okay, why are these agendas being pushed? Like, why is it so important that we all bow down to the altar of transgenderism? Yeah, so continuing, this is basically a report outlining the social impacts of this whole ideology, of the whole transgender movement, and the social impacts, because I mean it's been a significant one. It's like, how long? Okay, so it's 122 pages. It's a really, really, really great read. It's really awesome because we need to learn how to articulate ourselves in a better way, not just referring to things as immoral or wrong, because again, if these people have no morality and they have no sort of baseline of what the purpose of life is, it's kind of difficult for them to sort of like compare and contrast. Like, obviously, everyone suddenly becoming transgender, it doesn't really serve, it's not beneficial for society, let's be honest, because societies need family units and they need children to come out of those family units. Otherwise, it's just a dead end. Uh, but that's, I mean, honestly, that could be considered hate speech, though. So it's sad to say. It's sad to say. I think this. I think this is something really worthwhile, and it can help construct more. It can help construct arguments against this ideology and the ramifications in a much better way than around morality. Family is the smallest institution. Exactly. Helen Joyce puts things really simple in this conversation. But yeah, so when we're thinking about looking at the long term of what's going to happen when we have a demoralized society that's like completely distracted by things like gender ideology, it's not just about living your life and doing things the way you want to do them and being free spirit or etc. It's actually going to have a real impact on the society as a whole because it takes attention from things that are actually relevant and important and overemphasizes things that are not important at all that don't really have a huge impact in society unless you know obviously inflate the importance with the propaganda and things like that. Yuri Bezmenov also talks about that in some of his lectures about how you get the society to become preoccupied with things that are just irrelevant, that don't matter, that don't mean anything, honestly. And I think we can see that in our everyday life right now. I mean, people just do not care about the long term ramifications and the really negative impacts of a lot of the policies that these global elites are trying to implement, like like shutting off people's power. Just turn it off. Uh, it's not sustainable and it's not going to work. So that's why understanding propaganda is going to be really important, not just now, but in the future, because when everything's so manipulated and access to truth is so difficult, um, being able to decipher truth from fact and what are going to be the consequences of supporting certain policies and actions is going to be crucial. And if you understand how propaganda works, you'll be able to do a better job of deciphering that. I mean, for so many of us, when we saw the C-19 situation, we were like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. It was pretty clear. It was pretty apparent. And for a lot of people, it wasn't. So, and that's just what happens because, and it's not related to intelligence level. It's not related to anything like that. Propaganda works in a very deceitful and vicious way. Absolutely. Consequence says, I was super into the gender ideology debate until I realized this was a multi-pronged effort. Yes, exactly. And that's the other thing too. It's really difficult for people to see how all of these seemingly disconnected, like not related issues are actually related. Like turning off people's power, making it more difficult to have stable family units, and screwing up people's sex and gender and relationships with this gender ideology. It all, I mean, ultimately feeds into depopulation. I mean, what's the main thing that it would happen? It's like you're destabilized, you're not going to have a population, and that population is going to suffer. Propaganda works on EQ and not IQ, exactly. worked a lot on that because a lot of the times propaganda makes sense. It makes sense, like especially when using some of their appeals that they use. I mean, they really resonate with people, especially when they have so much data on a person and understand their pain points and understand what it is that they need and what they're looking for. So overall, overall, it's sad that it's come to the point where everyday people have to really take a step back and see what is it that I can actually do to sort of stop this like process. This what seems like almost inevitable process of destabilization and demoralization and all of these things. But I think it's important, obviously, because too many of us just took our hands off the wheel and just said, let Disney decide what we think is good. Let let the Marvel movies dictate what reality should look like. Have you read The Naked Communist? No, I haven't read that book. I'll definitely check it out. Okay. But anyway, so I'm glad everyone was able to join this live. I'm in the process of uploading some new content. I've made my Patreon and I have some interesting content that I'm uploading there. I'm going to actually talk more about propaganda on the Patreon and just get really in depth there because I feel like if you're self selecting, that's what you want to hear about. But on the YouTube, I'm going to mix it up. And on Instagram, I'll mix it up to different things like social commentary, entertainment, news, politics, like whatever. Just mix it up to, help sort of educate around, real life issues so people can see them in context and action. And it's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be because people are really interested in like the main categories are like relationships and things like that. So it's funny to see how you can actually like insert this heavy material around propaganda and mind control and social engineering around those sorts of topics. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody joining tonight, Friday night, and I will be coming online every Friday. I'd like this time slot. I think it works really well. So you can always message me, I think. Yeah, you can DM me on Instagram or you can just email me. I'm going to put my email in the community center and start the membership, like the membership channel area, because I think that would be helpful because there's a lot of commentary I want to make, but I don't want to make it necessarily public because of all the censorship backlash. I feel like YouTube is like the first step in a very deep conversation. But anyway, thank you guys. I will be on. I'll probably come on later this weekend, but yeah, make sure to tune in next. Tune in. Make sure to watch the live and sign up for the lives next week as well. All right. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.